Dude,
Hello.
we've got two suitcases full of stuff up here. Let's just make the decision. We've taken up a lot of time.
We've got this big boy.
Yeah, you know, that's packed with everything. There's probably let's just do the good stuff. Let's get rid of
But this one's got this one.
Yeah.
What about all the drama?
Let's let Dawn and Sarah go through that one by themselves, or not. Let's just.
Oh, sorry. Take this one off.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I'll set it over here. It is our bag. Well, actually, it's your baggage. Okay, we'll talk. We'll talk later.
We'll talk. Why don't you fish something out of there and we'll talk about it.
Tricky Dick Nixon?
Mercy. A lot of people can't. This is an important piece of UUI. I'm gonna take a picture of it and we'll see what the tech team can do. Oh. Can you display look at that. It's like instantaneous.
Whoa, technology. This is wild.
So
can we thank Nixon for this technology?
Al Gore, I think.
Oh, it's Al Gore. Yeah, he did invent the internet.
So that's a big memory for me. Ryan really takes credit for this too because he remembered this plate. It's a weird thing for a Unitarian Universalist congregation, isn't it? It kind of brings to mind to me that we are sort of a diverse community here. Maybe not diverse in the way we think of it now, but we have all kinds of people in this community. We have Republicans, Democrats, all kinds of people, and we need to take that into account in our community. We don't all the time, but one of our members, Jamie Fenner, the first time I did the church auction, bit of a $5 bid over here, now $6 and $7 bid over here, now $8. I got roped into doing that, and Jamie came to me and he said to me, John, I don't think the people in this congregation have much of a sense of humor. And I said, sure they do, Jamie. We all have a sense of humor. And he said, well, not very many people. I want to put this Dick Nixon plate in the auction to see if people have a sense of humor. We can have a bet on it to see if people do or not. And I said, sure, what'll we do? And he said, I want you to tell a story, lie, whatever you want to do. Just tell a good story about what a treasure this plate is and how I got it. Make something up and see if we can raise any money. And if we raise money, you're right and I'm wrong. So I don't know when this was. It was in the 90s sometime. And so I told a big story about this plate, and we auctioned it off, and it became a tradition. The first time it brought, I don't know, $100 or something like that. I think that almost proved Jamie wrong. But then the people who bought it kept bringing it back to auction.
I can't imagine why.
I think, well, there might have been a capitalist thing going on here. I don't know why. But it got brought back to the auction 4 or 5 times. And at one time, a man whose name I won't mention because I don't want to associate him necessarily with that plate, but I think he paid $500 for it. And the next year, a member said, I'm going to get that plate. And Jamie Fenner was kind of done with it at that point, and he said to himself, I'm getting the plate. And I think Jamie may have paid $1,000 for that plate. And Jamie was kind enough to lend it back to me to show today, and he was wrong and I was right. UUs do have a sense of humor. So let's take out, we've got a bunch of paper in here, but this paper is attached to wood, so how about that one?
Ooh, wood paper, my favorite kind of paper. So this one actually comes from my house. It also comes from my wife, but should look familiar to lots of folks out there. And my wife, Stacy, was kind enough to write a little bit here for me about this piece of wood. which I didn't. I'm not going to be as cool as John, so I can't put it up on the screen as quickly. The tech team doesn't like me as much.
Our tech team is magic.
But what happens when you give a bunch of hammers, nails, and wood to a group of teenagers from UUI? This isn't like I don't have a punchline joke for this. Probably chaos unless you have a group of mentors like Ray Wilson, Bob Lipford, Ed Archer, Anita Saunders, and many others to channel their energy and teach them important life skills. When that happens, you end up with a hardworking and conscientious construction crew that builds homes and sheds for families. Through UUI's Habitat for Humanity project, youth from UUI participate in a week-long trip to Michigan with long days on the job site. However, before they were allowed to even pick up a hammer and start swinging, they were first required to attend training sessions at UUI. During these sessions, Ray and others hammered in, my wife wrote that terrible pun, the basics of how to drive a nail properly, the importance of attention to detail to ensure a safe home for families and a safe construction, as well as what tools they need to bring with them. Year after year, the Habitat for Humanity staff were impressed by UUI's exceptionally prepared construction crew. I can confirm my child went on this trip once. They had never seen a hammer before, but helped to build something. The mentorship didn't end there. Between their long work days, the youth lived together for many, many years, staying at Ed and Judy's beautiful lakeside home in Michigan. The youth piled up like sardines in their sleeping bags on the floor, and mentors like Anita, who ran a tight schedule to ensure wherever they remained clean and tidy. A tough task for a group of teenagers. The youth were divided into teams, and a chore chart ensured everyone knew who was responsible for what. They took turns making delicious meals each night, often trying to one-up the other groups, shop for ingredients with a budget after planning their meals, and reluctantly made sure the bathrooms remained clean. Bob even impressed everyone with his cooking skills, teaching the youth how to blanch potatoes for the crispiest fries. It's true. That's just science. It wasn't all work, though. The youth created deep bonds with each other by taking time away from the devices, playing games, jumping in the lake to cool off after hot and sweaty building days, impressing everyone with talent shows, and creating their own worship services each evening. I know that for the youth I know that came through UUI, this is a memory that they still talk about some when we come around, and we still have pieces of wood around our home. So that's a fun one. Oh, John, I have another piece of paper.
Wait a minute. I'll say something else about this.
You gonna say something about a block of wood?
That your wife, who was a president of our board, is very hardworking. I drove by your house yesterday, and she was out weeding. Where were you?
I was inside. No, actually, I wasn't. I wasn't home. I was going for a run. But she told me you and Carla drove by.
So you want to fish out a piece of paper?
Yeah, I've got
for
this
me?
piece of paper right here.
All right.
Unfold that one.
We're a messy group. It's a whole bunch of crumpled up paper in here, but I'll uncrumple it and try to read it. This one comes from my wife, Carla Kirchie. She says that I remember early on in our time at UUI, maybe in the late 90s, we had a dance to celebrate something. I can't remember. My wife is getting a little old. I didn't mean that,
Wow.
honest. There was an actual dance floor set up right here, a wooden dance floor, and a real band. And she says, I remember Ray and Cindy Wilson were dancing really well, and she was saying to herself that Ray could really cut a rug. And as a lot of times here, there were a bunch of women without partners here, and she remembers that Ray went up to every one of them and danced with them, everyone who would, which with Ray was probably everybody. Again, Ray is quite the dancer.
Okay, all right. Just because you're embarrassed you don't dance as well as Ray doesn't mean you have to throw it.
I'm not embarrassed about it.
Oh, yeah, you seemed like you had a lot of emotional energy about that one.
I have aspirations. It's what this church is all about.
Oh, all right. This next one comes from Cindy Wilson. So that it's like, who knew?
You don't ever have to say you're sorry.
No, you don't have to say you're sorry. Cindy writes, in 1994 or 1995, UUI decided to add on a sanctuary to the existing building, which was originally a basketball court with a stage on one end. I would have really looked forward to hooping in here. That's what the kids call it. I don't know if you... The architects proposed a plan we could not afford, and several members worked with them to get the plan to come in at a reasonable cost. We could have just had Ray build the whole thing. I mean, we had some capital fund raising meetings with groups of generous members, and I got involved working on that part of the effort. But my real effort was to have that sanctuary built before July 1st of 1995. That was the day our older daughter, Hadley, was to be married to Fred Horch. Hadley's wedding was not the first, but it was the second wedding in our new sanctuary. It was a beautiful wedding with one of Judy Plyce's quilts in blues and purples hanging behind the delphiniums we placed on the makeshift altar. Larry Hutchison, our minister at the time, conducted a beautiful ceremony. And up against all walls of the octagonal sanctuary were long tables covered with white tablecloths and garden flowers from several of our members and friends. The minute the ceremony was over, appetizers were served in the social hall and outside on the patio built just in time for this wedding. Meanwhile, Bob Lifford and several other friends whipped that sanctuary into a lovely banquet hall. The caterer was a member of UUI, as was her husband, the bartender. I've bartended here before. It's pretty great. Our other daughter, Alicia, was one of the two bridesmaids. We had a dance floor in the social hall and a great band for dancing. This is probably the dancing thing that you were at. Maybe you weren't invited. I don't know. Those moments were definitely some of the best moments of my membership in UUI. I don't think I'm going to crumple this one. This is a good one.
How about another one?
There you go.
Maybe this won't be about old people. Who knows? I mean, nothing wrong with old people.
You have some internalized ages. You really got to work through it.
Well, you know, I remember that drink you mixed me was really watered down, too. It is. It's younger people and a really younger person. This is from Shelby and Alex Irwin. Our special UUI memory is really a collection of experiences, the times this community has fed us, both spiritually and physically, with shared meals. Prior to the pandemic, we participated in an adult religious exploration class, which always started with a meal and conversation in the social hall. There were UUI friends who brought us meals after Lily was born. We were thick in the newborn haze. We got to enjoy sampling various delicious chili soups and cornbread on Trunk or Treat Day last October. There have been meals shared at Holly's house, getting to know other UUI folks, including John Cornell, with Lily sitting on his lap, sharing generously and feeding her from his plate. There's something comforting and selfless about feeding one another, and as formerly unchurched persons, something unique and special about sharing space with others this way. I won't throw this over my shoulder, I'll put it back.
Oh, wow, okay. Whatever works, whatever works. I've also shared some meals at folks' house. I could go for some chili right now. It sounds pretty good. Oh, thank you. This one comes from Sasha Gast. I left a psychiatric hospital in spring of 2021, knowing that I needed to find a community to belong to or be held by, or else I wouldn't make it much longer. I had heard of Unitarian Universalism before, and a chaplain at the hospital suggested I check it out to see if it would fill the void in my soul. The weekend I got home, I looked at what UU churches were in the area, found UUI's virtual service information quickly, and attended on Zoom that Sunday, and I haven't looked back. As a transgender mentally ill person living in a state that isn't very friendly to people like me, finding UUI was like a healing balm. I found community in a place that I truly feel accepted by and valued. My greatest UUI joy has been being involved in our weekly meditation group, which is so much more than just a meditation group. We meditate. Yeah, that's given. Yes, yes. But we also share our lives, our joys, and our hardships with one another. We deeply care about each other, and that care extends towards our new members and old. We lift each other up and hold one another in community. I don't have to be afraid of speaking or expressing myself just as I am, and that means the world to me.
Ah, another middle-aged person. Sylvia Mayuri writes, I first came to UUI in 1990 at the invitation of a friend who was a member. I was newly widowed, so was very apprehensive when I decided to attend a social event, a dance at the church. Maybe it was that same dance. I needn't have worried since everybody was friendly. Maybe Ray Wilson. Everybody was friendly and welcoming. I never felt excluded because I wasn't part of a couple. I thought, okay, these are my people. I've been at UUI ever since. Thanks, Sylvia.
I hope it was Dawn that she danced with. It would have been weird. That would have been a good story if it was Dawn Summers that she danced with, and that's where they met. I think they met at a banjo convention, though, if I remember correctly.
That's in the other suitcase.
That's in the, that still is probably a good one. This one comes from Tim Thomas. It was back when we gave the mic to people to share their individual joys and sorrows. Oh, we can bring that back. That could be exciting. Founding UUI member Ron Rachel stood up and said he had both a sorrow and a joy. That he'd been walking along the canal that morning and found a trap in the water full of turtles. That was his sorrow. He said he took a fair bit of time to unlatch the trap, set the turtles free, and watched as the turtles swam away to freedom. His joy. If I remember correctly, Ron got a big round of applause for this. A few other people shared their joys and sorrows. Then a young man with glasses and a ponytail took the mic and said, "My name is Travis Ryan." And that was my turtle trap. I'm a biology professor at Butler University. My students and I are studying the effects of pesticides on aquatic wildlife in urban settings. My joy is that at least now I know what happened to all the turtles we'd seen yesterday. Tim added, I can't exactly remember what his study was on, but you get the idea. Small but very cool world here at UUI.
All right. One of my favorite UUs, Tim Murphy. He wrote me, John, sorry, I saw this email right at the beginning of my most recent roller coaster trip, and I just forgot about it until this morning. That was this morning. The first thing that comes to mind for me, if you get a chance to include it, and if not, that's fine, just that's very UU, I think, is the dedication of two UUI youth years ago, Walker Farrell and Tony Motzi, who were the only high school youth at the time. They agreed to include the junior high and to try to boost their numbers, which worked. In fact, it worked so well that a year later, we needed to separate the two groups again because the big youth group had grown so large. Peace, Tim. All right.
I feel like that we could have gotten a lot more stories out of Tim and Anita about youth groups.
Your own story. We'll crumple it up and put it in there.
Look, no, it's right here. There is something on this piece of paper, and it's a ring. This ring is really important to me as it's my wedding ring. And just like Sarah talked about earlier, I think the thing that I have found most impactful about UUI and the work that we do here also centers around Al. I had a child, as many of you have had, or you volunteered your time to teach children about their bodies and about the world around them and how they can have safety and feel comfortable in their own selves. But this isn't a story about that necessarily. Our kid, Isabella, went to I think the first time was out at Heartland, and I remember driving up there to just off of 465, and they were hosting it at the time as part of Citywide OWL, and they were maybe in third or fourth grade. And I remember them coming home after each class and talking to us about the things that they learned and telling me things I didn't know about my own body, which was great. And it had such an amazing impact on them. They grew into a wonderful human being, not just because of Al, but they grew into feeling more comfortable about themselves. And I promised myself that once they aged out, and it wasn't really weird that I would be teaching Al when they were in Al, because that would be weird, that I would volunteer my time to help out others as those folks had helped out my child. And so my wife and I signed up to do OWL. We got the training. We became a part of the citywide OWL team that went to Heartland and Oak Landon and here to teach OWL. And I can't remember exactly what year it was, but I do remember where it occurred. And it centers on this ring that I just put back on my finger. So we were at the Oak Landon Church teaching junior high OWL, and we were in a demonstration phase of the OWL section where you explain how you can use prophylactic devices on reasonably anatomically correct things. And my hand became over lubricated, and I lost my wedding ring. I didn't realize that until I was driving home. But I was driving home from Oak Landon to my house and realized that all of the lubrication on all of those condoms I opened had somehow worked the ring off my hand. And it was lost. I drove back to Oak Landon the following week. I called, I searched everywhere for it, and it was lost. I just assumed that they had taken it out in the trash, and that had probably been where it had ended up, and that it was gone forever. Approximately 12 to 14 months later, I was on a call with someone when I mentioned this funny anecdote, as you often do with other OWL-related folks, because like, what isn't funny about a condom joke? And someone from Oak Landon happened to be on that call with me and said, I have that ring. And they had held on to that ring for that full year, knowing that it belonged to somebody, and that eventually somebody would come and track it down. Later that week, I drove up to Oak Landon and I retrieved this ring, and I've been wearing it ever since. And that's the story about OWL. That's all about OWL. Oh, they couldn't remember where they'd found it. We used to teach OWL in the basement of the Oak Landon Church. Here it would be out in the sanctuary or sometimes over in the cottage. They had just like found it on the floor. Like it was very wet, but they had found it, and you know that they were like, this ring belongs to somebody. Yeah, they'll track it down. I mean, there were a lot of condoms in the trash can. I don't know. Yeah.
It's an owl story.
It's an owl story. We've got one more story.
All right. This will be the last one. I know everybody's hungry. If it's long, I'll try to pare it down. Oh, this is from John Cote. My favorite thing when I think of UUI, I got a lot of favorite things. Can the tech team start up the pictures? I got asked, I'm a photographer sometimes, and I got asked to teach a youth class on photography, and I said it would take 4 Sundays. And I won't go into the whole thing, but we We studied a bunch of famous photographs in the class. We talked about how they were lit. And on the last Sunday, I brought in my set of studio lights, and we set it up over in the Commons building with a backdrop and everything. And I gave the kids my camera, hooked it up to the flash system, and we adjusted the lights till it looked like what they wanted, and they took pictures. There's Elise, who just got a job. All of these pictures except one in this group were taken by the kids. I think they're stunning pictures. Just to show you how, one of the pictures is taken by me because the young woman in the picture didn't have another picture of her, so I included it. And I thought they were great, and I took them down to IU to show them to my photo professor, my photography professor. I had a minor in photography in college, and my professor was still there, Jeffrey Wallen, a world-renowned photographer, and I showed him this group of prints, and he looked through them, and he was pretty wowed. He said, you know, it's like they're taken by kids who aren't all up in making perfect photographs. They captured life, except all but one. One of them looks like a senior photo. It was mine. Anyway, there's our suitcase full of UUI.